What is going on today, Joe? We're just going to let this play in the background for a little bit while people get hyped up.
We do have exciting music. I will say, we made this change a few months ago, and I love it.
It's getting contagious. Yeah, I don't know why. I just like the vibe it brings to the beginning of the show. What's up, everybody? Welcome back. Today is another episode of Learn It Live. We're going to jump into taking a project from Figma into Client First. Webflow just did this whole campaign, Figma to Webflow, and we're all about Client First. And so a lot of people have been asking, well, hey, do something about Figma to Client First. Not to mention, we just found out last week that on Figma, we have all these templates that have been getting tons and tons of downloads, like thousands and thousands. They're trending on Figma. That was news to us. So we said, hey, let's do an episode about that. Let's introduce people to these templates. Let's show people what that process looked like of going from a Figma design into Webflow. So we're going to jump deep into that. Joe, any thoughts as we get started here?
Well, I'm excited for this one because I don't really know Figma that well. I find myself having some trouble in Figma, so I'm going to learn it, learn it live with everybody here in the crowd.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
And as special guest today, we have Simon Lampert on the left side of your screen, and we've got Tito Solano on the right side of your screen. Oh, that's not the right slide. I did forget to mention that. I should mention that just real quick. Let's do that real quick. Okay, we'll go to this screen, and I'm going to jump right over here just for half a second. Let me tell you about two things we got coming up because, we should just do that. So let me kill the music here. Show and tell Monday. If you have anything cool to share, if you've been building something in Figma, in Client First, if you're building something in Webflow, you have something interesting, come share it with us on Monday. Cool show and tell event. That's always a lot of fun. And the next thing and final announcement that we'll make is that we're doing the Global Open House again. If you were around last year, this was a super fun event. Great place to meet a lot of Webflowers from all over the world. So you can go to global-meetup.webflow.io and sign up for updates about that. That's going to be March 24th. So save the date for that. And now let's get into what we were doing here, introducing the guest. All right. So Simon, say what's up. Simon runs the boot camps at Finsweet. He runs the Client First boot camps. And so Simon, tell us a little bit, say hello. You're coming onto the Webflow scene strong. Simon is what, 17 years old, Simon?
Yeah, that's true.
17 years old, out here killing the game. What's up?
Yeah, I'm excited to make my first appearance here on the Finsweet live streams. Some of you might know me. I created some videos on the Client First. On Client First, it's called the Productivity Series, and I'm thrilled to be here. And I'll show you some things today.
Nice. Awesome. Happy to have Simon here. We've also got Tito Solano, who is the Clone Comp champ from last year. That's an exciting event that will be coming up again in August. So a little shout out to Tito here. But also he's a recent bootcamp grad. So he went through the Client First bootcamp. So say what's up, Tito. And maybe just give a quick little intro.
Well, I am really happy to be here sharing with you and all the community. And well, these have been like a really nice months for me, learning Client First and implementing it to my workflow. So I am really excited to share a bit of my experience.
Nice. And then Joe, did you want to say a little hello to the folks here, and then we'll jump in and say hi in the comments. So feel free to say hi in the comments, and we'll run through whoever's in the chat with us right after Joe here.
I'd love to add to those intros. Both of you did a great job introing yourself, but you left out a couple of key things. Simon runs our boot camp in a sense that he is managing the certification process of Client First. He's building pages in the docs, and he has really ramped up a lot of what he does at Finsweet. Now he's super focused at Client First. That's how we're able to do a lot of content, which we're going to review on this stream. All of it starts with Simon. Nice. And then with Tito is a badass in Webflow. You have to check out his clonables, his projects. He is really creative with JavaScript. A lot of solutions, a lot of really cool projects that just break the boundaries of Webflow. So go check out his work. Really inspirational.
Nice. Yes. Both super talented. Yeah, you're going to see a lot more of these two across the community as we go. So let's real quick say hi to everyone in the comments. So what's up, Michael Rose in the house? Let's do this indeed. Happy effing Thursday. Here we go. Jay Poucher, what up, yo? And I think he said something about, did he say Papi Chulo? I don't know what that music says in the background. It's got like,
I think so.
It's like Papi Chulo.
I think it is. Yeah.
No.
Oh, no.
Papa Julep. I don't know. I'm not sure. But anyway, nice try there, Jay. Okay, who else is with us? Brutus, Mark Brutus, what's up? Babas is in the house. Rohan, Magdalena, hello, hello. Christopher Coleman in the house. Jay Aranda, Alex Pearl. Happy to catch another live show. Happy to have you with us. Thanks for being here. Oana's in the house. Penny is here, still trying to stay warm in Ontario. Listen, I'm going to Detroit Friday. I don't know how I feel about that. It's really cold in Detroit. Okay. Well, Roa is here. Mark is in the house. Penny says she's almost ready for a boot camp. Michael Collins is in the house. Daniel Brosnio, Jose Arce, Heatherwick, Andrew Jennings, what's up? Digi Hotshot, John Dunn. Oh, Omkar. Man, there's so many people here today. Anson Troy. What's going on? Okay, let's get to it today. So where are we starting? We're going to talk a little bit about these client-first templates in Figma. So let's do this. Let's get rid of these things. Let's come over to Figma. And Simon, why don't you talk to us? Because you're the one that jumped out and you're like, hey, by the way, these things are kind of going nuts on Figma. So, and I'd like to hear two things. Simon, you know, who's kind of been managing this process, and then Joe, what's it like to just like find out of the blue that, you know, these files are just kind of going nuts on Figma?
Yeah, well, so ever since we started to release these files, they were going through the roof in Figma. So they got a lot of traffic on Figma community, a lot of duplicates also, more than we got in the Webflow showcase. But yeah, so over the time, the numbers have even increased, which is also that also has to do with us just increasing the quality even further, because we our files are just super structured nowadays, and that's probably what makes it attractive for the people to clone.
Yeah.
So here we've got, for example, like the most the one that has been cloned the most is like at 2.5K clones. But yeah, then we also have some who stayed at a couple of hundreds, but these are great numbers.
Yeah, super cool. Joe, tell me what you think as you see this.
Well, it's exciting because we almost didn't do it. We were so close to not doing Figma files. We were planning for launch. We had built out a whole bunch of Webflow templates. That was the main purpose, the Webflow clonable. And we weren't really set up for Figma. The files just weren't there. We had Figma files, but they just weren't ready for public release. And I said, you know what? I think it would be really valuable to spend the resources, spend the time, spend the money to go and prepare these for the public. And it really feels like a good decision after seeing this. I also, with you, found out last week that this was doing well. Right. And yeah, it was just a check like, man, I'm really glad we did this.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about these. Simon, you were telling me at the beginning, just as learning assets, right? So what we're going to do, for those of you who are watching, we're going to talk a little bit about the process of kind of looking at these Figma files. And let's say a client gives you a Figma file. How do you start thinking about translating that into client first, right? So how do you take that from just a design asset? What is the process? We're going to go through. We won't go into like actually building the things because we've done other episodes of how to build with client first. But what we will do is we'll show you how to set client first up, how to get into the style guide, how to kind of set the groundwork, and what you're looking for when you're taking these files from Figma into Webflow. So as we usually do, we're going to get super interactive. Feel free to leave your thoughts and comments in the YouTube flow here, or thoughts and questions in the YouTube comments, and we will get to them as we go through. But that's just kind of going to be the flow. So let's talk a little bit about the value as learning resources. And Tito, maybe we can bring you in here. What do you like when you're thinking about this process? Like, like learning this? You know, you just went through the boot camp. Talk a little bit about just learning this process and approaching this in general as a creator.
Oh, well, I have like read a lot about the documentation. It is really complete, so I think it's a good idea to take a really good reading of that documentation. And then also, I like a lot to see the actual chronables and study them, search for details that I find difficult in my project, so I can take a look and see the examples and then practice it. And it's, I think it's pretty helpful because it's like always there should be like something similar in your project that you can find out in another one. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and that's a good point, Simon. Actually, I want to throw this back to you too, because that was one of the things you were talking about was like, now not only do you have the clonable, but now you've also got this Figma file that you can go reference, and you can go see like, okay, these elements are set like this, and you know, like you can go compare the results from a design to the finished product. Like, talk me through, you know, that as just somebody who's learning, maybe advice to somebody who's watching this either now or in the future as to what their mindset should be as they go through that process.
Yeah, sure. So basically, all of our resources are completely free, so you can get them from the Webflow showcase or from our website, finsweet.com/client-first. So there you'll find our resources. And let's say you want to learn client first. So what you can do is to just simply have a look at the completed templates, and then you'll see, oh, I like how this template looks. So I'm just going to try to learn client first by rebuilding a template. So this is a really nice opportunity to get the hang of client first, because you can compare what you're building to our results. And you have the perfect starting point for this with the Figma templates, with the Figma template files, which we provide. So you can get them from Figma community also for free. We have the style guide. We have everything set up. So you can jump in there and translate it into a Webflow project, and then compare your results. And you'll also find that some sections might not be that easy for you, maybe from the start with client first, but we also have the other templates. So you can also have a look at other templates and how we manage to set up some sections, and that will help you a lot in the process of learning client first. And it has already helped a lot of people to learn client first.
Nice. Nice. Okay. So, Joe, any thoughts on any of this here?
Yeah, I have to think that these files can also be used to help with design iterations. Imagine you start from a template, but this is not going to be the final template number 9. You're going to change the colors, change the images, change a whole bunch of things, and you can really iterate very quickly in Figma without bloating up and testing with the official Webflow project. So then when you get through the design iteration and the client's happy with the new design, then you can go into Webflow, go into that clonable with more of a strategy. So there's a lot of use cases for this. It's a nice complement with the clonable in Webflow.
Yeah. Yeah. And for anybody who's interested, that's just finsweet.com/client-first. And, you know, you hit that website up there, and at the top, you got resources and all of your different, I hope everyone's okay. I don't know what's going on, but I hope everyone's okay. So you have the showcase here. You can also go see what other folks are building, right? So we had the Room folks on last Thursday or a couple Thursdays ago, and then they've got all these other assets. So this is a great thing. Like one of the first things that I used to learn Webflow was exploring the showcase, the Webflow showcase. And that was how I started dissecting projects, and it became really helpful for me to see how people were building, but I didn't have a structured like naming system at the time. And that's something that from our stream the other day, we found out that it's the most complicated thing that people have to learn inside of Webflow after like CSS positioning and all these other things. Now you have to understand global styles, which is where client first comes into play. But I didn't have resources like client first to go dissect, 5 years ago when I was starting with Webflow. And so to have these assets, to be able to come in and learn and not just be able to see like the client first template, but also the Figma file and be able to jump back and forth, super cool. So anyway, yeah, it's a great learning resource. Don't overlook that if you're just kind of jumping in. And even if you're looking to check your work, right? Even if you're a little more experienced and you're looking to check some of your work, that's a great place to go. So, okay, so let's jump to the next thing. We're going to take just a couple seconds and talk about the bootcamp, Tito, talk about the process of learning client first and the certification process, because this is something that lots of people want. We're going to roll out. Actually, we mentioned the March open house. At the open house, we're probably going to start pre-selling our paid membership tier, which is going to include some certification. So part of that certification is this bootcamp thing. So Simon, maybe just give us a quick overview of the bootcamp, and Tito, just a quick rundown of what it's like to go through it. And from there, we're going to jump in and we're going to have Simon and Tito screen share, and we're going to spend the rest of the time actually looking at the Figma files, diving in, looking inside of Webflow, and getting our hands dirty with the rest of that. So Simon, share just a bit about the bootcamps, and then we'll jump to Tito.
Yeah, so the bootcamp is an initiative that we started a couple of months ago. With the initial bootcamp was actually for some new people to join the Finsweet team, but we kind of picked up this model to actually organize a real bootcamp with real members of the Webflow community who wants to get better at client first. So we picked a couple of people. We had a lot of applications. And we kind of guided them through the process in becoming a client-first certified Webflow developer. So now all of these people who went through the bootcamp are now, like Tito, client-first certified Webflow developers. And the bootcamp was just so people like Tito actually created some of the templates. So created them alongside of us, the people who managed the bootcamp. To really provide a great value to you, but also to learn client first. We gave them feedback, the participants, and they improved a lot while the bootcamp was going on.
Nice.
Well, for my perspective, it was like a really nice opportunity to be sure that I was learning in the good way, because all the time you are studying something new and you're trying to put it into practice, but you are not completely sure if it's right. So from the beginning, they sent me this nice Figma file, and it was like a huge challenge. I have to build this complete website and start practicing what I think that I have learned. So it's really nice to have feedback to clear some doubts that you may have in some sections, because I think client first ends like a way of thinking on solving problems. So anytime I come with a section that it was a bit difficult, or I have like trying to solve, I can ask, and it was like a chat where we can start talking about that and how everybody can solve in different ways, and then we have like a decision on which way could be better, and that was pretty nice.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's one of the things I think a lot of people are looking for. It's like instruction's cool, the videos are cool. It's just that hands-on level of like having somebody really look at what you did, having a little bit of mentorship, having that like one-on-one stuff, that real feedback is really what those boot camps are all about, and what we're trying to figure out how to scale with this next community tier that we do, because we do so much in the community, we give so much in the community, but it becomes very difficult to have that one-on-one time with everybody that wants it. And so what we're trying to do is figure out how do we kind of scale this up and help as many folks as we can, but also still, value ours and Joe's and Simon's and everyone's time who's a part of this. So Joe, any thoughts on any of that before we jump into kind of looking at these files and really getting into the weeds here?
Yeah, that the content, we're hoping as we get more content and grow more content, Client First will become more and more accessible to start learning, to start understanding. Tito's totally right, where you really need that hands-on knowledge. But I want to say that we are releasing a really nice update to the documentation within the next few weeks. I don't know if it's going to be 2 weeks or 3 weeks, but we're going to have a new page in the docs, and this page gives a lot of clarity into naming, into topics that we're finding people have trouble with. So one of the reasons we have this boot camp is to hear what's working, what's not working. Simon has recommended things that we shouldn't do with client first based on how Tito's working. And this is really a lot of how we grow client first from real usage. So we're looking to do more of that. New docs page coming. It's going to be even more clear. And yeah, we're dedicated to more content on this.
Yeah. And John's asking a good question here. What should you say is the basic skill level for someone who would like to take the boot camp? So far, I've taught myself using the docs and videos. Yeah, that's a great start. The boot camp is for the folks who really want to vet it. And the boot camp will not be moving forward. The boot camp will not be offered as like a standalone thing. The boot camp will be part of the, some of the other tiers that we're working on. And so I think it's just going to be for those who want to really elevate their skill set. Like if you're looking to make money with Webflow, we're going to build programming that's really going to help you step up that game to learn these sort of these tools in a hands-on setting. So it's like you can learn as much as you can, and we'll continue to do as much free as we can with the resources. We'll continue to give videos and hands-on in this type of setting. But if you want that like elevated experience, if you want that classroom one-on-one timeline, then that's where you'll step in. So I think there'll be lots of different at people's skill levels, but it's mostly about how you want to learn and what that approach will look like. So I'm not sure there's a period.
I'd love
there.
to.
Go ahead, Joe.
Well, I'd love to add to that. I'd say the basic skill would be a full project build with good client first practices. It doesn't need to be perfect. It doesn't need to be the 100% ideal state of client first, but we have to look at your project and say, okay, this person understands client first.
Good point.
We can see them being certified. If you come to us with a website that's not in client first or really didn't follow the documentation correctly, you probably would not be accepted into the boot camp. The boot camp is not teaching from zero. It's someone like Tito who says, I understand a lot of these concepts, I'm using them, but I want to confirm that I'm using them the right way. I want that hands-on experience to go from knowledgeable to pro. Nice. That's how I would answer that question, John. Great.
Let's see, one more question by Yannick. Here's a follow-up. Will your offering be mostly in the technical side or also the business? The FN certified stuff will include business mentorship and some of the agency stuff. We've talked about like incubator concepts, networking. There's going to be a lot of stuff included in that. We won't get into the details because that's a whole episode in and of itself, which will come soon enough. But yeah, we're dedicated to that. That's why we have the Tuesday growth stream, and so we'll bring some of that into this space. So yeah, we'll have the technical side, but we'll also have some resources for the other stuff as well, I believe. So okay, so let's jump into the next step. Let's start getting our hands dirty a little bit. We're going to spend the rest of the show from here on out kind of looking at how we set up client first, what are best practices. We're going to have Simon and Tito do some screen sharing with us here. So how do we start? Simon, do we just jump into your screen here?
Yeah, I can show the Figma files for a second, also how to get them, maybe if someone doesn't know how to do this. And yeah, I'll just share my screen then.
Yeah, and then one other thing I was going to show, I think. Oh, yeah, I wanted to pump the extension real quick because what I'm going to have you both do here in a second, or maybe Tito do, so one of y'all can be prepping, is like, how do we get client first set up, right? So everyone go grab this extension. We're going to show you how to clone the client first setup, but also how to install the client first framework from the extension into a Webflow build. And so let's see, Simon, if you want to send your screen, I'll go ahead and grab it and bring it over here. And this the Finsweet extension, if you didn't catch a show Tuesday, I'd say go watch the show Tuesday, our stream from Tuesday. Watch the first, I don't know, it's like 10, 15 minutes of that. We get into just an overview. There's been a reorganization of the different things inside of there, and we've got a lot more coming with this. So if you don't have the extension, I definitely think it's something that everybody who's working with Webflow should have installed. So let's see if we get Simon's screen here. I'll turn off mine. There we go. Okay, boom. All right, Simon, you're driving.
All right, so I'm currently inside of one of our templates. This is the podcast template number 8. But firstly, I'll show you how to even get these templates. So I'm currently inside of Figma community. So from your personal account, there is a tab on the left side where you can select the community. And there you'll find this window here where you have this nice search field in the application, desktop application. It also works for the web version of Figma, obviously. So then I'll just search for Finsweet here. And this now gives me these results here, which are the templates we have released so far. And now let's say I want to get this template here, the podcast template. So I already got it here, but I'll do it again. So I can just duplicate it. You can also give a like here to promote it. Then I'll just duplicate it. And now, yeah, it's as simple as that. Now I have the template, so I just cloned it, you could say. And the project is fully set up here. So the core part of it, actually, if you want to develop this now in client first in Webflow, as we mentioned before. So the core part, in my opinion, is the style guide just to get started initially. And then you also have the design here. So we have every single page here set up. So we have the headings inside of the style guide, for example. So they are also using kind of classes, you could say, inside of Figma. So every single H1 in the Figma file is connected to the style here. So you can now you can just inspect it here, inspect the styles for the global class, you could say. And there you can see that it's the intro font, it's bold, and it's at 48 pixels, which equals 3 rem. You can use our Chrome extension if you can't calculate it, this value in rems. So, and then you can also see the line height, and you can just do this for every single style, which you can then transfer over to the client first style guide, which you can also clone for free from the Webflow community. I think we'll also show how to do
Simon,
this later on.
Quick little question here. When you're working in this Figma file, are you thinking about the client first naming conventions when y'all set up these templates? What if somebody gets a template that's not client first and maybe it doesn't align? Should they spend some time in Figma making some of these adjustments to get it to client first? Or is that stuff you could do while you're transferring it over and just kind of knowing, hey, I'm going to transfer this to client first? And Tito, I'd love your feedback on this because I'm sure you've worked on this. So two things first. If I'm working in Figma and building, should I be thinking about client first? And is this referenced here? Obviously, it's referenced in our templates because we made the system, but maybe other templates wouldn't be. And so, like, should I think about that in Figma? And then secondly, you know, what am I thinking about in that translation process if I don't do that?
Yeah, so it's easy actually to work on a project even if the design is not in client first. There are like little tweaks that we can just do while developing. So I personally wouldn't update the Figma file first. I would instead I'll see, okay, there's a value, let's say, that's not in our 4-point system. So let's say I actually moved it a little bit accidentally. So let's say there is a margin that is not as it should be. So here it's so in our builds, we try to always have the spaces set up so that it's in the 4-point system, but it's also actually equals the margin values that we have in client first. But it's not really that important that the Figma file is also in client first, you could say. It's rather really about just having an organized file here. So as you can see, our files are also really organized. You can see it in the navigator here on the left side. So every single thing is named. So that's really more important to me personally in a Figma file, that the navigator is clean so that you can also work with it properly here. And then just little tweaks. So if you see that a margin value is really near to one of our margin values in client first, so the distance, you can just tweak it by just adding the class in client first. And it will even make the design a little bit better because you'll have it in a more consistent way if you're using an organized system as client first is. with consistent values that don't change on every single instance.
Nice.
Uh,
Tito,
well,
any thoughts there?
Well, yeah, I think that's an interesting topic because sometimes you have to agree with the current designer of the website. So I started by checking all the hierarchies on the headings, see if they are near to the client first system, and then the calculators helps a lot because you can start like checking if it's near the RAMs, near the 4 pixel system, and if something is a bit different, I think you should like make a test and see if the difference is huge. And at that point, you start like creating like a like an adaptation if the designer agree with the RAM system. But because I think it's good, it's better, but you have to communicate it sometimes because some things are gonna be a little bit different.
Yeah. Okay, so that's a good point to say there. So you're saying that when you come in and you find this Figma file, you look to kind of unify some of the design elements into what you already know is going to be your Webflow style guide, right? So you know, hey, my client first Webflow style guide has X, Y, and Z parameters. Let me see where those translate here. And then if there's gaps, then you got to figure out how to rectify that. Maybe it's close to the padding, so you can just do it, or maybe you've got to actually go talk to the designer and maybe make some modifications there. So that's a good point for anybody watching that, you know, as you approach that Figma file, just kind of the things to think about.
And I will say that this is very common when getting a Figma file or any type of design file from a client. It's very rare to get a perfect, exactly everything correct file because they're usually on a timeline. There's a time crunch, and there's just not enough time to go and make everything organized, right, Simon? This took a long time to go and organize every single layer. So it's common that all of these spacings are not on the 4-point system, or there's a piece of text that should probably be a pixel or two higher or lower. Usually when you reach out to the client and say, hey, I'm following this 4-point system, maybe add a little link to a resource explaining what that is. Usually, almost always, the client comes back and says, yes, please. We didn't take the time to make sure everything is perfect. Doing that in CSS can be very natural. It could be the CSS can be the cleanup process.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good way to think about it. I think maybe that thought process is a good way to look at that cleanup process, right? What do you have to what paths do you have to merge to get it into Webflow? So, Simon, go ahead. Yeah.
Let me add one more thing to this. The cleanup process is really amplified in client-first global utility classes. We have styles for all the typography, and we have styles for all the spacings. These are some of the key parts of the utility system in client first. And I think these complement really well with some potential issues throughout design files that we see designers, you know, maybe they're following the system for most of the typography, but there's probably a few that don't fit in. Same with spacings. So these two things, client first, will help you organize these kind of Figma files, these type of designs with these utility classes.
Yeah.
I think the two most important, typography and spacing.
Well, and those become huge value adds to the client then, because now you start unifying stuff that maybe they're not thinking about. And so this is where, again, you start offering that value that helps you elevate the pricing point. If you're following along with our Tuesday streams, you know, we're always talking about how do you provide more value back to the client. This is one of those instances where now you're like, oh, the super pro, because maybe they gave you a little Figma file and, you know, like, hey, you're going to help them do a little bit of something to clean that up, to get it to the website so that it's nice and formalized. Any thoughts on that stuff, Joe, or I'm sorry, Tito or Simon?
Yeah, so our system is definitely like the perfect thing for flexibility in larger scale projects to adapt really quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think our RAMs are like new for so many people, maybe. But I think if you make a good introduction to the benefits of using it, clients are gonna be like happy with you because it's something new and something that is way better.
Yeah. Yeah, and some of these are conversations that you probably don't even need to have with the client unless they do have people that are going to get into the back end of Webflow. Otherwise, you know, it could technically be over their heads. I don't know. The clients need to know a whole lot about pixels versus rems. But let's look at what Philip is asking here. He says, Joe, do you recommend or find, okay, I'm going to be verbatim. Do you guys find any benefit in using Figma over Adobe XD in relation to using client first? And how does client first affect your design process or decisions?
My initial answer to this is it really depends what the designer wants to use. I've met people that feel a lot more comfortable in XD or a lot more comfortable in Figma. And if that means better workflow, better design, I say work in that platform. I don't see huge benefits. I'm not a designer, so maybe I'm not the right person to ask. But the reason I prefer Figma is just a little bit easier access. Adobe has all of this login and permissions that just make it a little bit more difficult than the openness of Figma. The public link of Figma, I think, is just a little bit better. But either one, again, I start with, what do you prefer as a designer?
Nice. Okay, great. Let's see. One more thing for. Oh, go ahead. Does somebody have a thought there?
I want to add one little thing.
Sure.
So while designing and keeping in mind client first, I think it's a great advice to keep in mind the container max width, for example, from client first, because this is also a great starting point to have an organized way of adding max widths to your build. So in this case, this is 1280 pixels, which equals the container large class of client first. So these are also some things you can think of. But at the same time, our container classes are also made to be changed. So if you want to use different container classes, different container values, this is also not a problem. But personally, I like to always keep in mind the container values of client first when designing. So this would be 1280, and then we would also have for example, the 768 pixels max width for the container small of client first.
Yeah.
So these are also some things I like to keep in mind.
Yeah, and this is one of those things where, like, obviously Simon is in client first, right? So he sees everything inside of the client first framework because it's kind of native to him. Whereas maybe you are just adopting client first and maybe it's not super native to you. And so those are just, I think it comes down to workflow too. The more you learn client first, the more you'll start looking at things and you'll want to start when you're in those design files, making those changes like Simon's saying, so that there's like a unity to your work. But that may not be something that comes to you immediately or is supernatural to you. And so it may be one of those things, you know, we were talking about whether Webflow is easy this past Tuesday. So it may be one of those things that, like, Webflow was easy to you the way you were using it, but maybe it wasn't as efficient from a scalability standpoint because your naming convention wasn't what it had to be. So now it's becoming hard again as you learn client first naming. And as you do that, that stuff will trickle into your design work. So the more structured you get and the better you get at the Webflow side of things, the more it'll start to make sense as you lead into that part of the phase of the project where you do the design stuff, where you'll just want to kind of see, okay, I know I'm going to do it this way later, so let me set it up this way here. Tito, any thoughts on that?
Oh yeah, about the widths of the containers, I think that's a question that I have that I think so many designers ask sometimes because they say like, okay, I'm gonna start designing this website, but what is the width of the max width I can take? So this is like a good guide to start designing also because you have these examples about the smaller, the medium, and the more bigger container, so you can make changes later, but at the beginning is like something that gives you a good idea on how good it would look on a real website.
Nice. Yeah. And I think that's is one of the things, like, you'll just learn and develop your own systems. Mirella here saying, I was inspired by Client First, created a basic file in Figma using as typography styles the same classes used in Client First. So bang, bang. Nice. Now you've got some little workflow hacks, and we'll talk a little bit. I'll ask the folks for a little bit of workflow hacks here. And if you have any little tips and tricks, we'd love to hear them. So leave it in the comments as you're watching this. If there's anything that's not clear about this process, because I think at this point, I would like to see, let's set up from blank. Can we go and set up a client first style guide? right? Can we look at that process, and maybe somebody opens up a Webflow project and we go and we look at, hey, let's translate this Figma file. Let's look at the thing and let's set it up in the client first. And let's show people actually, first of all, where they can get client first, so let's show them the website. And then second of all, how to do it in the extension. So can we show those two things for the folks? And we'll go back to this screen. And I think, let's see, what am I looking for? Oh, we'll go here. Simon, I'll need whoever's going to screen share to jump into that.
Okay, I can do it, yeah.
Okay, so first things first, Chrome extension. If you don't have this thing, go get it. Second of all, you come over here to the finsweet.com/client first, and doop doop. At the top is a little clonable tab, right? So this is where you should start, right? If you're just getting started for this for the first time, look at this, almost 4,700 clones on this. This is nasty. When did this come out? What's the date on this? August 12th, right? This thing is screaming across Webflow. So start here, get familiar with this. It's super basic. You literally just click the clone project. Y'all know how it works. I'm not logged in on this computer because I can't be logged in on two computers. Thank you, Webflow, anyway. But so, okay, I'm going to jump over to Simon's screen. Let me grab your screen here. Okay.
Yeah, so I'm currently on the client first website, which is at finsweet.com/client-first. And so Raymar already mentioned it. There's this clonable tab here in the top right, this clonable link here on the top right corner. So you can just click this one here. And from there, you'll get to the Webflow showcase, which takes a while to load right now. And there in the Webflow showcase, you'll be able to clone the client first starting project, which is really just the style guide pretty much, so that you can get started right away and don't lose any time with having to cleaning up any sections or any unnecessary parts of your website. I'll just refresh it because it's taking a while. Yeah, so there it is. So as you can see, 4,600 clones, and now you can clone a project. I'll just clone it with this name. And inside of the client first project, we can now delete the parts that we don't need, which is just the really small section here. So we can just delete this one here, and then we're good to go with our project. So now we can also have a look at the pages. So there we have the style guide. And the style guide is where I usually start projects, because inside of the style guide, you have the heading tags right away here. So I mentioned this before in the Figma files, we have the style guide, so we can get the values for the headings, so the heading sizes, the heading heights, right away from the Figma files. And now we can style the tags, the heading tags here by selecting the with the selector here by selecting the headings, and now we can just jump in and make the changes. So let's say it's 5 rems, so we can just simply do this. So I would usually do this for every single heading, and then I also like to do this for the global heading classes. So as you might know, if you're familiar with client first, they're kind of equal to our headings, so I also adapt these so that they fit alongside our heading tags. And I also like to style the responsive values sometimes, but sometimes I'll also just leave that for later. So this is where I would start a client-first project. Just transfer the styles from the style guide in Figma to your Webflow project. And there we can also do some other things. So we also have the buttons, for example. So in the Figma files for client first, we also have button styles included. So you can also have a look at your build and just update the global button classes and things like these, and add the swatches maybe. Just create new swatches, and there you go.
Tito, any thoughts on getting started here and going through that process?
Yeah, I agree with Simon. This is a good way to start. I also like the form at the end of the style guide, because in that way you have that solved already from the beginning, and you can also use that component for later. And here it's good to apply also the color and start working with the swatches. and that's pretty helpful. And with the client, with the Finsweet extension, you can start like also like making changes in the swatches, in the color swatches, to have like good order in that.
Yeah, that's okay, so that's cloning the CF. Can we go through and let's say I just have a blank project or and I want to add some of this. How could I do that with the extension?
Yeah, so to demonstrate this, I could just delete these classes maybe for a second.
Why don't we start from
So,
just a blank? Why don't we just start from a new project? Let's just open up a new tab and start a new project.
okay, yeah. Okay, I can do
But
this. I just
I will say that it should not be added to a blank project.
Okay, there you go.
That's yeah, we don't if you're starting from a blank project, start from the clonable. There's no reason for that.
Yeah, I would
What
prefer.
what may be better is you
Can
have already built a project or there's a clone from somewhere else and you want to say, "Hey, I'm rebuilding a lot of this and I want to use the spacing system."
great.
So you're adding it to an existing
So this is what
project.
I was trying to get to. Can you explain why some of that stuff matters? And I'd even like to maybe dive into the CSS specificity a little because this comes up all the time. So can you explain? Like that's what I was trying to prompt. Is like, hey, no, we don't really want to do that. Can you explain why now?
yeah. So you should always start from the official client first clonable because the styles are set up in a perfect way. You have all the styles firstly, and also the styles are set up in the right way. So we had some people reaching out to us because the global spacing system was not working for them. Maybe if they already had a project and now they wanted to add the client first global classes to the project, because there are some problems with the so-called CSS specificity, which is just the order of classes in the style sheet, and this can cause some problems with the way our spacing system is set up. So how we would fix this is if we don't have any classes at all inside of our project anymore, clean up all of them. So we currently couldn't use the spacing system because it's just gone, or actually it's still there. um, so normally what you would do in a project is if you want to add the spacing system, you'll just go to the Finsweet Chrome extension here, and in the client first tabs, you have some great options for you to speed up that process. So you could just click add spacing system, and what this will do is that it will set up the spacing system for you right away and without causing any problems. So I'd always recommend to do this if you are already inside of another project, you didn't start from the official clonable, then you should add the spacing system with our Chrome extension.
Nice. And that again is because it's going to add them in the proper order so that you don't have issues with specificity. We've had people in the past ask us and they'll say, hey, I'm trying to apply margin in a certain direction and it doesn't work. And I copied and pasted everything over. And that has to do with the order with which the CSS classes are styled inside of Webflow. So the order with which they're created creates an order of specificity, which means it gives preference to those earlier created classes, which means if they're out of order, they may not respect when you type them in, it may not do what you need it to do. Did I get any of that wrong, Joe? Any clarity there needed?
No, that's absolutely correct. And we can still do this test on a blank project. I just wanted to make it clear that you shouldn't be doing this as the start of your project.
Got it.
So Simon, why don't you cleared the styles, maybe send a publish through and reload designer, and I would hope that those styles are gone. And
Okay,
yeah,
yeah.
let's go and see
turn-
actually using the extension. And this would be for some other project that's already built that you want to add the spacing system on top of.
Yeah, I'll just create some space in my Webflow projects because it's currently full, and then I'll share the screen again with the new projects.
Okay. I could also go in. Oh no, I'm not logged in on Webflow on this computer. Doggone. We could talk about specificity if anybody's interested. I pulled that up. I was thinking maybe we'd jump into that. It's not something that we need to dive into too much, and this is just talking about CSS specificity, but it's one of those important things to know. It's one of those things that like you don't have to learn with a Squarespace or a Wix or a WordPress, but it's something you need to know about in Webflow, because this could cause issues in other ways, not just with the client first spacing as you go. So just something to keep in mind there.
Yeah, I think it's good also to have the style guide from the beginning, so it's pretty helpful. So it's better if you can start from zero.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's all right. Let's see what happens here. Check 1 2. Don't nobody say anything crazy, just in case we're actually streaming right now. Okay, don't be out there talking about Jay Poucher at all or anything. All right. all right. It looks like WordPress strikes again, Michael Rose says. Oh man. I think we're back. Yeah, we're backing up. Yep. Okay. I don't know that I have Simon's screen in here. Let me copy that. Are you all hearing me, guests? Hello, check 1 2.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
Simon, everybody. Okay, yeah, we're live again.
Okay, so should I just go ahead or should we wait?
Nope. Yep, you can go ahead.
Okay, yeah, so this is a blank project, so we don't have any styles inside of this project. I just started it. And so the first thing that I'll do now is to add the core page structure, which is one of the things you can do in client. Oh, so this only works if you actually start from the clonable. I didn't know this, but you can add the spacing system. So you could select if you only want the paddings or only want the margin system, but I'll just add the full spacing system. So this will now reload my project, and now I actually have the spacing system set up. So as you can see, we have all of the classes here. And now it would actually work. So we could just add a div block here, and then I'll use the shorter version of marbot to select the margin bottom class. And now I'll just select marla, which is margin large. And now you can see that it's working. So if you set up the spacing system using our Chrome extension, it will always work, even if you didn't start from the client first clonable. So this is the Chrome extension. Add spacing system here, and then you can just add the spacing system, and now it will work. So normally it can cause some problems if you try to recreate it by hand without using this method here. Alternatively, what you can also do, if let's say you don't have the extension, which you should have, then you can also copy the size classes first. So let's say all margin size classes, all padding size classes, and then the directional classes. Then it will also work for your project with the spacing system. But just creating the classes can cause a lot of problems, which some people have reached out to us.
I'm sorry, I'm not laughing at you. I'm laughing at all the comments that were coming through when we dropped. Oh, goodness. Yeah,
Simon, that was
I don't mean to derail you, Silent. Just go ahead. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to derail you.
That was a great overview. I think it is fitting to bring up Paul's question. Paul Ratchford, he asks, I'm getting the sense that you wouldn't really go back into an old job and try to apply client first, true? Or maybe just implement the new the spacing system. That's what Simon just did. Simon just added a spacing system to a project. So imagine this is an old project, not built in client first, and I add the spacing on top. You could do that, absolutely. If you're going to continue building new pages, maybe there's 10 new pages in the build, you can have a change of system. You don't have to follow the old system if it's built really poorly. So when I enter an old site and I want to continue growing it, I'll just switch to client first immediately.
Mm-hmm.
If there's nothing good about that past build, if there's nothing that you can take globally, just go and make the change. And then it's easier to see what was before and what was after. So that's one way to do it. Paul, it really depends on the project. It's so case by case. There could be cases where you may want to rebuild it. There are cases where it just wouldn't make sense to rebuild. Usually would not make sense to rebuild.
Yeah, I think it's usually a lot of work to do, trying to change
Yes.
it.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, even if it's set up nicely, even if it's a well-built project and it's named nicely and it's super readable, it's just because you never know which one of those classes has a relative, versus absolute, and now the parent doesn't have it because you tried to wrap it in some div, and that knocks all sorts of shit down chain off whack. So yeah, it's hard.
I'd love to explain the process that we take on the agency side when we get a really messy project that we have to start to maintain. And this, I think, really works well with Paul's question. You get a website from a client, and this website is built so poorly. We have div 176. We don't have any sense of a well-built site. And the client says, hey, I need an update to this page. We're going through a little bit of a brand refresh, and we want to go and do this page and this page and this page. What we'll do is we'll clear out an entire page. Let's say delete the entire page and rebuild that page in client first. And as the client starts to rebuild pages, build new pages, we just start using more client first. And then it gets to a point where most of the site is client first. And you say, now just these two pages are in client first. And it becomes much more manageable. Again, if you are growing it. If you're not growing it, maybe it doesn't make sense. But we are taking in sites that clients want us to maintain, add new design to, and continue building new pages.
Yeah. Well, and speaking of that, you can do things like right here, like the cleanup stuff. You can remove all styles from certain breakpoints down. You can rename classes. You can do certain things. So, Simon, what are you doing in here with? I see you bouncing around, reordering, kind of looking at different things. What are you doing over there?
Yeah, so I was just demonstrating the functionality of reordering styles in client first, which is also sometimes a thing that comes in really handy for me also, because the CSS specificity is basically just determining which class is higher in the hierarchy, you could say. So which class will be the dominant one. So if two classes have two different colors set in the typography settings, then the CSS specificity will determine which class's styling will be the dominant one. So this always depends on the order of your classes inside of your style sheet. So that's why I was inside of this inside of the Chrome extension here to demonstrate this. And this is also how the classes are being added. So as you can see, it's just as I said it before, the size classes, in this case the padding size classes, are added here, and then we also have the directional classes, and the same is here with the margin classes. So that's how the classes are added if you add it from our functionality inside of our Chrome extension.
Nice.
Awesome.
It's totally unrelated here. A buddy of mine is watching right now. Shout out to Christian, who's an automotive designer, and talking about they're moving to Figma inside of some of their automotive stuff. And so he's just sent me a message saying, hey, we're just jumping into Figma. So some of this is interesting for him to watch. I don't think they're getting their hands dirty in Webflow just yet. but maybe soon we'll be. Christian, if you know anybody who's handling the web over at Toyota, holla at your boy. Okay, let's see. Couple other questions. Simon, or I'm sorry, who was that? Go ahead with whatever thought that was just going to
That was me, and that was a question for Simon, actually related to Figma. So nice that you brought that up. Simon, there is a question from Fernando earlier in the chat asking if we have any plans for turning our wireframe projects into Figma templates. So right here, we see all of the design templates that we have, our resources in Figma. There are no Figma files for the wireframes. And I told Fernando, this is going to be your decision. So I'm going to put you live on the spot. Are we doing it? Are we going to release these as Figma?
Yeah, I think we can do that. We actually have something in kind of up our sleeve there. So
there you go.
So you'll get them. You'll get them.
Awesome.
Nice. Ron John, I see you asking questions. We're not going to jump into those today. You're asking about attributes and other stuff. I would recommend you go over to finsweet.com/vote. You can suggest a piece of content there, or reach out to the Sweet.js Slack channel, and maybe somebody can offer some support through one of those channels. Let's see. What else do we have on our, let me check our doc here. Do we have anything else that we were supposed to cover today? Setting a style guide. Any tips and tricks just in general? You know, when you're making that transition over from Figma to Webflow, like any little hacks we can share, any little time savers, anything like that we can share with the folks here?
Yeah, so I've spent a lot of time in Figma. Which means that I also found out some nice tricks to just speed up your building process when also transferring a Figma design to a Webflow project. So I'll just I'll just open it here in the browser. Open here instead. So there are some nice tricks, some nice shortcuts I really like to use when working with Figma. So for example, one of the most important things is to measure distances. So it would be pretty stupid to measure distances by creating like rectangles like this to measure the distance between objects. In some situations, you'll have to do this, but that's like really not what you should be doing most of the times. What you should be doing is with a selected element, you can press the Alt key, which is, I guess, Command on Mac, right? So there you can see that the distance is now in orange here. So it's 128 pixels here. I'll zoom in a little bit. So it's here. So always select an element and then hover over another one with the Alt/Command key pressed, and then you'll always see the distances, which is really important for the development. And so that's one trick I would really recommend you to use. And then the next thing is a deep selection. At least that's how I personally call it. So what you would normally have to do when hovering over an element is to make multiple clicks to actually open the element here, because it has to go through some layers here. But the best option here is to hold down the Control key, which is the Command key on Mac. So then you will have a deep selection here. So you can just have one click and you will select the deep element immediately without having to go through like multiple layers to have your selection, which can, just speed up your process.
Nice. And this is such a benefit of having that neat and organized Figma file. So when Simon showed the distance, holding that Alt key, the spacing distance, we make sure that that's correct for you so that you don't have to guess. But if you didn't have a neat Figma file, you could see different values in between every single section. So that right there, that's where the neat Figma file going from Figma to Webflow is really clear.
Nice. Tito, any tips and tricks in Figma or moving over to Webflow?
Yeah, well, something that I like a lot that I learned these days is the use of SVGs as embeds.
You
I
obviously code
think,
them yourselves, right?
yeah, yeah, but that technique it's pretty useful, and because allows you to have hover states and change of color. I think Simon has a video explaining this technique, and I like it a lot. It's pretty useful.
Yeah, so Tito is talking about SVGs in Webflow and how you can copy them from Figma to Webflow with having a perfect setup. So I could maybe also show how this works for a second. So let's say we have this LinkedIn icon here. So I will just right click it and then it will give me the option to copy paste it as an SVG. So I'll just click this, and then if I go to Webflow and I add an embed, so I'm just using the menu here, I'm placing an embed. So now we have the CSS code in our clipboard. So I'll just paste it here. So we have the option to paste the SVGs from Figma into Webflow without even having to export them. And now we also have the setup where we can install the current color option. So I'll just have it as a height, or I'll just go back here. I'll bring back the height. Yeah, like this. I'll set the height to 100% for a second, like this. And now the important part is to set the fill color to your current color, which is not the easiest setup in this particular icon because there are a lot of different colors. But by setting this to your current color, like this, so you'll remove this hashtag here, this character, and then type in current color. And if you do this for every single fill option here, then you'll be able to change the color of your SVGs inside of Webflow. So this means that you won't have to go back to Figma all the time, export your icon in a different color, and then come back to Webflow and upload your new icon. But instead, you'll be able to do it right here inside of Webflow.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and this is good practices just in general SVGs. This is something that I didn't do any of when I was first starting. I would just like export PNGs in different colors, and even for like interactions, sometimes I would hover and change the background color of like they would just be uploading a whole different image, which is works, but it's resource intensive. It's not ideal. It's nowhere near best practices. So yeah, just learning how to do this here. Yannick is asking, can you resize the SVG here? You could, right? You could use this height parameter right in the code.
Yeah, no, you can even do it in Webflow. So if we set the height to 100%, like maybe we could even remove it. That's just how I've been doing it. The height attribute, it's just the fill current color is important, and then you can create a class. So I'll just create a live stream.
Gabe was saying that current color was misspelled, so I don't. It may.
Yeah, I think you
that
need
was
the
the delay.
uppercase, uppercase, and the second C.
No, it's all right like this. It usually works like this. Then I'll just set it to let's say 3 rem in height. So now it just resized here in the left bottom corner. Okay, I can't zoom in really. But yeah, so I resize it, and now I can just switch. So it's not the background color, but instead the text color. And now you can see that the color is updating in Webflow. So it's the way faster option to work with these type of icons to just again set the fill to current color. It's just written like this, and then you can actually just set the sizes here. So this would also work for breakpoints, and now I'm resizing it and it's updating.
Yeah, and Jay Aranda's asking, how about the hover effect, right? You can change that too, right? Just going over to the state, change the state.
You'll just have to change the state to hover, and now you can change the color to, let's say, blue. So now if we preview this, we could like also add a little transition here. So we have to get out of this hover state, add a transition on the font color. And now if we preview it, we're hovering over it, and it's changing the color really in a smooth way. So to mention this again, inside of Figma, just right click an element, copy paste as, and copy as an SVG. I think there's also a similar option for other design tools, but yeah, you should use this in every single design tool because it's just a really fast way of working.
Nice.
Yeah.
Getting a question here. Let's see, who was it? Hans. I'm not trying to understand. Let's see. He said, would you do Joe's client first method with old WP sites? I'm imagining that's WordPress sites or just with older Webflow sites. And then you followed up with, are there problems with adding a client first clonable page to an older WordPress site? These are not language, like these, they don't mix and match. Like you can't take client first from Webflow and dump it into WordPress sites. It's, you know, apples and oranges. It's, you know, Greek and Chinese. It's just not, they don't, it does not compute. So maybe if you were writing a theme custom from scratch in WordPress and you were responsible for naming the CSS, but in WordPress, that is what the theme does. The theme handles your CSS. In Webflow, you have to write the CSS in the global styles. So that's where client first comes into play. It's not something you have to deal with WordPress. So just wanted to make sure we addressed and clarified that. This is not stuff that's interchangeable between WordPress and Webflow. Let's see. Is the code available in the attributes library? Working on a project now where I could definitely use this. Joe?
The code for what?
Yeah, I think he's asking for the background, for what's happening in the background. And I don't think so. That's some secret sauce there.
I'm sorry, I still don't know what code we're talking about.
I'm
The SVG
imagining
code?
I'm imagining the code. Is the code available in the attributes library? I think he's asking, like, is the actual attributes code available? Like, is the source code for attributes available? No.
No, it's not available. It is not available. Although I will say I got an update that we are making progress with our developer API. We have the base of the developer API ready. We just have to write the documentation, produce it, and launch it on the site. I don't know how long that will take, but we are making a lot of progress for developers to better work with attributes using code. And actually, since we have the question on attributes, let's talk about a new post that we've just launched today for attributes. And that post is about form UI elements, using form elements with your attributes filter UI. So I'm going to go and share that post in the chat here. This is now live, available for reading, and it gives a rather technical explanation into why we're using form elements to build a filter UI instead of divs, link blocks, or buttons. And we are trying to convince you by the end of this article to say, double thumbs up, form elements on the build. And also, we have a lot of clonables on these. These clonables use client first. Something like attributes really connects with client first because we're using client first for all the resources we give you in attributes. So check this article out, read through it. You will probably learn something in this article. I think everybody that's read this article learned at least one thing.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
check it out. Really good content.
And I feel bad we didn't go through this at the beginning. This was supposed to be our part of the opening here. We breezed right through it. But this is a super helpful article. And it's not that we're trying to convince you by the end of the article, because this is an argument. We're just trying to explain to you why we made this decision and why it's best practices to use form elements for this type of thing. And it's quite interesting. I wanted to go and maybe just talk about, you know, this first right off the bat. It's just passing user inputs. That to me was the most interesting thing, right? Like a filter is just grabbing user inputs and then redefining what's happening on the page based on those user inputs. And a form itself is designed to take user input on a website and pass it to the website itself. And so the premise of this article is essentially that we're using the tools that are already designed to grab user inputs from a web page and pass them to the website themselves to take those actions. And so this article goes through why we do that, why it's important to pass the information, why it makes it accessible, you know, all the different reasons why it's important. And then we go through a number of things talking about steps and complexity, how many steps, the number of attributes. This one was eye-opening to me. If we use different elements, if we didn't use the form elements, like and we just use div links or buttons like other people have, and even like we did in the CMS library, you would see that it's just a more complicated setup. And so great article, definitely worth checking out. It's just a taste of what's to come over the next week. We're going to have a lot of content that's deep dive into the technical side of things over the next week. So stay tuned on that. Tito's getting some love here from the crowd.
Yeah, Tito. Nice. Go, Tito. So amazed with your knowledge with client-first attributes. We just worked together on a project, and he just killed it. Nice, Tito. Great to see that.
And by the way, shout out to Melissa Mendez. If you guys don't know, a Webflow party in the house. So it's always a Webflow party when Melissa Mendez pops in. Okay. Any thoughts, questions, anything else? Pierre is in the house too. What's up, Pierre? He was saying other good thing with current color method is that you can change the color of the SVG from the parent element. So that's not otherwise possible too. It can inherit those style properties. Just like Simon was showing with the hover states, you know, if that is not set and you change the parent state, well, then that will inherit down, just like other CSS properties.
Yeah, like for example, inside a bottom.
In a bottom?
Oh, a button. In a bottom. Yeah, like a hover state.
Nice. Okay. I think we're good to cut out of here, huh? Anything else that we need to mention or talk about? Let us know what you thought in the comments. Joe, any closing thoughts?
Great episode. I'm glad we got to talk about this. And really, I urge you to jump into Figma. Even if you're an XD user or you use something else, just check out the Figma to Webflow process using client first, what we were going over today. I think it will be a good process for anybody.
Yeah. And it's one of those things that's going to take time. You know, like we talk about this all the time. Like it's just something that you're going to have to work at. Something you're going to have to get comfortable with if you're not used to it. But that's okay. We're here to help. I think as you'll see, we're doing a lot more content like this where we're going to try to jump in. It's hard to get too deep and cover everything. So again, this is where we're going to start offering some more localized stuff, hands-on learning, things like that. So if you're interested in any of that, stay tuned. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel. We're on a quest to get to 10,000 subscribers. Where are we at now? I think we're at like 9,600. Where are we at?
Yep.
It's growing fast. Let's see. YouTube. I have to go to YouTube.
9610.
All right. So growing fast. It was like 95.46 yesterday. Did we get like 80 subscribers yesterday?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, let's do it.
Tuesday content.
That's right. Well, it's either that or like somebody's got lots of accounts and lots of moms and uncles that they're sending to. We're gonna assume it's all of y'all. Be sure to like and subscribe this video. Tito, any closing thoughts as we get out of here?
Well, no, I think it's client first is something that has changed a lot my workflow. So I am really thankful with you guys for creating this, and I recommend like for real to people to take a look to client first and give it a try for sure.
Nice. Simon, any final thoughts closing out?
Yeah, thanks everyone for being here. I think it was a great episode, and I would recommend to learn a client first, really, to have a look at it if you haven't had a look at it already. And yeah, have a nice day from my side.
Nice. Pierre, real quick, is saying, can't believe Finsweet isn't even a 10K subs given all the value provided to the community. Don't you worry about that. It's growing fast. Yeah, literally, I think we found a stride with these live streams, in addition to all the other content that we create on a regular basis. And this is just going up and to the right. So we're not worried about where the channel's at. But 10,000 will be a fun little milestone for us to hit. So anyway, thanks everybody for hanging with us for another episode of Learn It Live today. This was episode number 9. Next week, major content releases coming from Finsweet. So stay tuned Monday. If you're not on our email list, you better go subscribe somewhere. Go over to finsweet.com/subscribe. Go to the growth website, subscribe there. We've got really cool content coming out next week that I think is going to be exciting for everyone in the community. So anyway, stay tuned. We'll catch y'all later. Okay.